both did amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. One thing that rings true as sort of a connection between both of your stories is this idea of having to really battle barriers for something that should really be a no-brainer. When we talk about the #1 cause of death in the United States for children, and we are not having enough conversations around how we limit that, but we're having other conversations, to your point, about the queer community, et cetera, right? So to that point, when you began your work, what was the most unsuspecting thing you discovered that ended up being a barrier for you? Let's start with you, Piyush.
Sure. So in my case, I think, and we are still battling some of that even today, it's oftentimes a battle of the mindset. In case of road crashes, for a lot of policymakers, for a lot of even the public, it was not considered to be an important enough issue or a development issue in the first place. They were called car crashes. So it's an issue of the car owner and not really of the poor. That might be true for the West, but that's absolutely untrue for India. 64% of people who are killed in road crashes in India come from extremely poor backgrounds. They are pedestrians, they are cyclists, they are two-wheeler riders, not by choice, but by compulsion. So a lot of times, the battle is to change that mindset, that this issue is having a profound impact on societies like India, which are trying to emerge out of poverty. And just as people attempt to do that, they are pulled back into poverty because their breadwinners are killed or maimed in these crashes. So fighting mindsets has been and is an ongoing challenge in this work that we do.
Yeah. Nicole.
I would absolutely echo that it is a mindset challenge. And people feel that you either need to be pro-gun or anti-gun and that there's no room in between. We have a gun problem as a country. I totally recognize that. We have more guns than people. We're not going to get rid of all the guns, so let's deal with that as part of the problem on the table and figure out how do you bridge together, because like I said, no one is pro-gun violence. A gun-owning parent wants their child to come home from school just like every other parent. So getting past the mindset of as soon as someone hears the word gun, thinking, oh, I have to be on this side or the other side. This is an and situation. This is about how we work together, and sometimes that is the biggest barrier, and that's why we don't ever do any naming or shaming, or it's all about seeking to understand, building bridges, and trying to break down perhaps some ideological bonds that people think they might have. But when you really get down to it, everyone wants to keep their family and their kids safe. So coming from that place and trying to get to that mindset frame is where we focus a lot of our work.
Yeah. Another barrier that I heard you both speak to was politically, or policy-wise, there being barriers to really getting the change implemented, the infrastructure implemented to drive that change that we're asking for. And for a lot of us, that is almost the pinnacle, right? Like that's the goal, is to get that infrastructure embedded into our system. So when you received that sort of pushback or that barrier, how did you sort of work through that and continue to push through that and not be like, hey, this is the final stop for me, but instead be like, there are other ways around it, right? What was sort of going through your head on your journey on pushing through beyond policy, beyond politics to make this change?
Yeah, I'm an eternal optimist, or I wouldn't survive in this space that I'm working in. So for me, it's all about finding champions. I spoke about building a tribe, and I think we've found in the course of our journey a number of champions. Now, oftentimes it's a bit of a technical work as well to identify who those champions are, because not everybody. I think everybody is empathetic towards loss and losing families and so on and so forth. But I think people, especially policymakers, also have their jobs to do. So what we started to do is, simplistically speaking, I carried out a market segmentation of the Parliament of India, where I found champion buyers. These were members of Parliament who had experienced the issue firsthand, I found economic buyers who were concerned about the GDP loss because of road crashes in India. I was able to find technical buyers whose job it was in the first place to address this issue. And I found competitive buyers, people who were concerned about India's reputation as far as this issue was concerned. So I think it's a combination of bit of a technical approach, but also persistence in ensuring that you convert people who are reluctant or people who are on the edge into your allies. And that's the process that we've been running, not just with policymakers, but even beyond, looking at citizenry in general and getting more people to back this very fundamental issue that we are battling.
Nicole.
Yeah, similarly, a lot of it is around coalition building with other like-minded organizations that might not be in the gun violence prevention space, but are focused on youth safety or suicide prevention or basic human rights, the right to life in general for all of our people. That's one thing, but when it comes to policymakers, this is where we focus on incremental change. I can't get to the end goal without taking the steps along the way. So some of the changes that we've enacted, some people might say, oh, that's not small, it doesn't go far enough, but it's built trust and relationships with different policymakers so that when we are starting to get to the bigger things, they know that they can rely on us to do something sensible. We know that we're the only gun violence prevention group that many Republicans will have at the table because we're going to help them and help them still keep their jobs, but to do something right. And we've had great success in doing that, but there's still quite a long way to go.
Yeah. We are at time, so I do want to end on one more question. The issues that you both are tackling and discussing today carry a lot of personal weight for you. How do you navigate that space, and what's one piece of advice that you would offer to somebody doing the same? Nicole?
I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I don't miss my son. And the people I work with are so amazing at Sandy Hook Promise because they choose to be there. I choose to stand in this space as well and continually re-traumatize myself, but the people that I work with are amazing, and a lot of the things that we talk about are giving each other space and grace when we need it. I'm not great at self-care. I can preach more than I practice, that's for sure, but I think recognizing that this is something that's ever present and being okay to live in that space with those that are around you, that's critical to the work that we do every day.
Piyush, you want to take us home?
Yeah, just very quickly. I think just very much like Nicole, it is a necessity for us to confront trauma every day, and for our teams. And while I think it brings a lot of weight onto us, I think it also provides a lot of impetus and motivation for us. It tells us why we need to keep going on. And I think that talking to the victims and going back to the ground is absolutely necessary to keep plowing through these issues. And I think that's what we do every day with. So I think emotional and weight is I feel in fact necessary to carry on work like this.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. Thank you. Round of applause for our amazing panelists. Thank y'all so much.